Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. It's one of those things that all of us go through at least some point in our lives. It's rather unpleasant, and it can come in many different shapes and forms. The reason why we go through this, I'm talking about grief. It could be the loss of a loved one, could be loss of a job, could be the loss of a relationship. With grief comes attachment. I'm intrigued to find how the two go together, but that's what we're talking about today. And I've got somebody that is going to break that all down. An amazing psychotherapist, Dr. Barry Pilson, joins us once again here on the program. Hey, Barry, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we'll hopefully kind of link this together to what we've been talking about in the last few sessions before that as well. Okay.
I'm interested to learn how attachment connects to grief, and certainly talking about grief, helping others on how to navigate through that challenging time, which can last for years. Where do we start with this today?
Well, just to sort of compress it a little bit, uh, attachment, of course, means connected, and grief implies disconnected. So the process of connecting and then disconnecting and moving on is really what we're going to end up talking about. But to put things a little bit more together, um, is we've been kind of talking about the process of psychotherapy, the process of growth and development, breaking down things like anxiety and depression as well. One of the underlying theories, as well as workable processes, is to understand kind of the very human issue of attachment. After all, it doesn't take a genius. We're born rather helpless into this world, and our attachments, especially to our parental figures, last many, many more years than most mammals, most primates on Earth. And so attachment is extremely important in terms of our growth, our development, and our survival, really, when it comes down to it. Very difficult to survive alone. You almost, by necessity, uh, physical as well as emotionally and socially, need to be attached to other people, places, and things, actually. So that's the overall picture. Um, Again, if I may, we can kind of continue in a little bit of what we've been talking about.
Sure.
When I've talked about emotional learning, I talked about the fact that uh, empathy and compassion are just as important as critical thinking in terms of our development. So, a lot of times especially in our Western culture, we tend to separate out emotions and uh, intellectual kind of what the important part about that is the fact that we need to develop, as we especially move into adulthood, a sense of competency and effectiveness in addressing the surrounding environment. So a lot of the things that we go through, whether we learn through other people, we learn through our institutions, we learn through our family relationships, uh, have to do with ultimately, again, developing a sense of competency and effectiveness, which is really what I've been trying to also talk about, is that this is what impacts our self-esteem and helps us to adapt to the world around us. Sort of comes out in a more global way in terms of our own wisdom and our judgment about how to proceed with critical processes. So
So,
anyway, I'm just saying that as a way of introduction at the moment.
no,
Go ahead, Steve.
I totally, that's a critical background to understand how we navigate. And certainly, I I'm not surprised, but interesting to hear that empathy and also compassion, just as important as logic, critical thinking. Um, Many of us who are exercise a lot of empathy don't even know we do. We don't they
Right,
we don't
right.
even know how empathetic that we really are.
Yeah, a lot of times you really don't hear or see if you, in simple, sort of straightforward ways, people, places, and things, unless we're emotionally connected, which means that we feel some empathy and compassion. It's when we don't feel that way that we tend to become disconnected. We tend to become alienated, and we tend to become very non-trusting either, which is, of course, one of the issues that we're dealing with in our modern world as well. We deal with kind of the resources for attachment, just like we're doing right now, able to talk, despite the fact that we're miles apart, able
Yep.
to connect, in an audio and video way. But if we're not also, you know, feeling some compassion and empathy, and some relation in terms of our experiences, then a lot of the ability to connect, or the value of connecting, can get lost.
Mm.
It's
I,
kind of like people sort of tuning out, as we say. It
yeah,
happens all the time.
but
You
the
know,
connection thing is an interesting one because I feel that you don't even have to be engaged with someone, even in a conversation, just being where there are other people, you feel a connection. For example, I love live music. I'll go anywhere. I'll see anything.
yeah,
It doesn't matter to me. But I like being there because I love the fact that we're all experiencing something at the same time. They're a bunch of strangers. I don't know who they are, but there's just something there that's electric, magical, energy. So I feel you don't have to actually converse with somebody or be fully connected with them, but still to feel that connection.
yeah. No, that's real important what you're saying. Just the communal experience
Sure,
of the music. Which we, there's sporting events. Okay,
sure.
um, uh, not that there's a little, but I was looking at the Buffalo Bills game last night on
Yes.
TV, full of snow, snow, snow. But and these people are playing in these obviously difficult conditions. But the stadium is full. You look, you just from the panoramic view, there's whatever it is, 70,000 people are there in those conditions.
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's not for
sharing
the love of cold, I don't think. you
100%.
know,
And now there's a commonality that's shared because yeah, everybody had to trudge through the snow to get there. Everybody had to deal with,
right,
minimal hardships than a sunny day in 85, to get there. Um,
right,
and lots to talk about, even if it's a stranger next to you. Like, hey man, do you know that they were paying $20 to strangers to shovel the field, which they were.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but it's something that everybody's experiencing at once. And thanks for bringing up sports because when I think of music, music to me is there's a certain energy with music, a certain message that comes through with it. Um, I forgot about sporting events. There's something else that's going
yeah,
on there. But again, the communal situation, people are connected. They're connected to the Buffalo
yeah.
Bills or the opposing team.
Right. And so let's face it, at a base level, they're attached. They're attached to
Yes,
the team. They're
a
attached to the
100%.
communal experience. You
Yes.
know, and does
Hmm.
that bring a sense of fulfillment? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
You can
Wow.
argue why are you so attached to your team? Well, who isn't? Okay, you know. Um,
I never thought,
anyway, that's kind
Barry,
of
I
what we
gotta,
do
I
on the
gotta tell
weekends.
you, I never, and that gets us into attachment. I never thought of it in that way. I never
Mhm.
thought of it in that way. When I think of attachment, I think of you're in a relationship with somebody. You're attached, there's attachment styles. Why are you connected to them? Why do you still want them around? Why
Right.
can't you, let's say it's not a great relationship. Why can't you not let go because of the attachment? I never thought of the communal attachment. Wow. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and that's a good I won't say a substitute, but it's a good addition to interpersonal attachments as well. Now, of course, in psychotherapy, we talk more about the interpersonal attachments, and that's where attachment theory kind of comes into play too.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just real important in terms of our self-esteem and our development of positive emotions that uh, we engage, that we seek out relationships, and the communal experience is a relationship, like you said.
Sure.
um, and accept and seek out and find meaning in what we do, and also to in terms of accomplishment, that the musical experience is, we hear the accomplishment of the musicians and
Yeah.
how well they go together, um, and of course, in a sporting event, that's pretty obvious. One loss versus, one winning versus losing, and the absolute identification of that.
Sure.
So anyway, that's kind of the background there. I want to say this too, just as because I haven't exactly said this, but I've been trying to say this, is that with psychotherapy, beyond, not beyond that, but inclusive of that, is that basically psychotherapy is a conversation. Okay, it's a conversation, between two people or more, and uh, that conversation is both an art and a science. Okay, and we have found over the years that the greatest predictor of change using psychotherapy is in the alliance or the connection between the therapist and the client. So the conversation is really the whole dynamic. And that is both an art and a science. Yeah, there's a science in terms of trying to understand that things like, you need to demonstrate that you're listening to the person. You need to ask maybe some open-ended questions. You need to make some interpretations. All that is the science of it. But the art of really connecting, beyond the science of it, is really part and parcel to the success of the psychotherapy experience. And that idea really has held up for years, for 100 years. Really, that's what Freud talked about when he talked about transference and countertransference. Transference being, what the client or the patient thought about the therapist, and countertransference being what the therapist thought about the patient. You know, and the whole point is that it's in that alliance, it's in that process where the connection is made. That's the point.
How do you, and we'll get into attachment and grief in a moment, a little bit
Yeah.
deeper. But I'm curious now that we open the door on psychotherapy and the connection there. How do you foster a stronger connection? I guess there are some therapists that might work with somebody, and somebody might not feel connected to them, not a
Right.
right fit for me. Is it just come right down to personality style and what, that's the
Uh,
base?
there's some other things too. Like uh, when you meet with somebody, what setting are you in? Okay.
Mm,
Um, what, how inviting is the setting, how comfortable some people are. Is it a warm setting, is it not a warm setting? Some people need to have almost uh, total neatness when they're meeting with somebody. Maybe there's not a book strewn around or papers or,
sure.
or stuff like that. Other people are fine with that. Okay, so the setting's important. um, the Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the most important things is starting on time. Okay,
Mm,
when you meet with somebody, like any appointment, um, if you know that when I'm having a 2 o'clock appointment, that we're going to start at 2, or a few minutes either way on that, then that's also important in terms of the connection. Okay, um, it means that I'm here, that I'm trustworthy, that I'm with you. Also, as a client, you're here. You're not running a half hour late. Uh, you're not
sure.
saying, "Oh, I'll come in at 2:30, even though our appointment was at 2." But that's okay. I'll just speak for a half hour, and I'll pay you for the whole session. That's. But actually, that undermines the therapy process too, because there's not, all of a sudden you're under different contingencies or different processes. You see.
You bring back
So
memory for me. I worked with a therapist Oh, this would have been 12, about 12 years ago. Some
Okay.
situations arose and it was impactful. Re-engaged him again about 4 years or so ago. And I realized that I'm in a different place and it didn't fit for me because he was very much into the logistics of my situation, the logistics,
Uh-huh.
where I was more about feelings. And
Okay.
that seemed to not be on his radar. So I felt like after I went for like 4 sessions, I just felt like he was not on my page anymore. So, and that maybe it's me different, that was
Yeah.
then, me now. We
Yeah.
evolve, we change.
That's right. We evolve and we change, and and it took you, at least you gave it a few sessions to sort of uh, confirm that for yourself. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
and it just
that's important too.
it seemed like something was missing in terms of what I was feeling about the situation, and he was more focused on um, the facts, the figures, the logistics of something. I appreciate him asking and remembering, but that's not why I didn't. There's attorneys for that, at that time. But yeah, it definitely was impactful. So let's go to attachment. There's different styles for that, correct? Don't up. There you are. We I think we had a Wi-Fi issue right
Yeah,
there. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
You okay?
Yeah, we're
Okay,
we're back. So attachments. Let's go into the different
okay,
styles there are.
okay. So, like I had mentioned before, attachment theory has been around. Just again to introduce us to that, there, what this was originally developed by a psychiatrist from England named John Bowlby, and Mary Ainsworth as well. She doesn't always get as much credit as he does, but that's another issue.
Hmm.
But anyway, there's basically what we've identified through, and what they identified was looking at toddler mother connection behaviors in certain situations, and there's basically four different attachment styles. One is called anxious attachment, one is called avoidant, one is called a disorganized, and one is called secure. The secure is sort of obvious if you're attached in a secure way. The original studies was the toddler could go away from the parent figure and didn't panic, sort of went away, played a little bit, maybe came back and checked, but felt secure in their connection. Okay. Um, the anxious attachment was uh, sort of fearful of being alone. And so we'll kind of venture out a little bit, but then quickly come back. Uh, Sort of not give themselves enough space or time to develop a little bit more sense of autonomy anyway. The avoidant uh, would just mean that they didn't trust the attachment, and so they would uh, not not really attach. Really, I don't want to say at all, but I guess that's what I'm going to end up saying. So that gives you a sense of that, and then there's kind of that in between, the disorganized attachment, which is kind of a push pull kind of avoid and approach. At the same within the same sort of space and time a lot of times. So I think it is a helpful concept in terms of trying to understand sometimes what kind of attachment style people have, and especially helpful in terms of looking at interpersonal relationships like
Hmm.
couples. Is one a more secure attachment? Is one a more kind of a disorganized attachment with kind of push pull? Are you going to be there, or are you not going to be there? How do I know you're going to be there? You know, uh, then there might be a testing of, well, I called you at 3 and you said you're going to be available at that time,
Hmm.
but you didn't answer. Uh, are you involved with somebody else? Are you doing something else? So those kinds of attachment styles different attachment styles sometimes can conflict, obviously, and it's kind of a helpful way of understanding,
So
how people connect.
I've always wondered about this, and I think we're going to run out of time. We didn't even get to
Yeah,
grief.
looks like it.
Grief could be a whole podcast in
Yeah,
itself.
maybe we'll do that next time then, Steve.
So,
Okay.
question about attachment and attachment styles. And you mentioned couples, so let's look at that right there. Is it normal for a couple to have very different attachment styles, or it can be quite common that they have the same attachment styles? How does it go?
Yes. Well, first of all, it can be common that they have different attachment styles. And it can also be helpful to sort of be able for them to delineate each of their attachment styles to a certain degree. So that, there's a little bit of compassion and empathy for how the other one is feeling, you see.
Sure.
And then it can be discussed in a more sort of rational way. I hate to use that word rational, but it can be discussed in a more meaningful way, maybe. That would be a better word. As far as it doesn't mean all the time that you have to have the exact same attachment style in order to do well. What matters more again is the conversation and how you handle that. You would sort of naturally think, well, if we both have a secure attachment style, we're going to be okay. All right. Well, at certain levels, that might be true in that, you're not as anxious or not as disorganized in your processes together. On the other hand, maybe it's too good to be true, and it's a little bit predictable, and I won't say it's boring, but it doesn't bring forth a lot of passion either. All right, and that's also important in terms of. So there's not a right or wrong one. You just have to identify it. And the goal in life is not necessarily to be securely attached, even though some people it sounds good on paper, you know, because maybe you've had the whatever experiences that you've had have led you into that kind of emotional dynamic.
So, final question, and this I think connects. You've heard of the five love languages, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
So we have those over here, and then we have attachment styles over here.
yes.
Is one more important than the other? The love
No, I think they're
languages and
both almost
attachment.
saying the same thing in their own way. Okay. And that is, again, how do you connect to people? And how do you understand how you connect? And how do you understand how your partner connects to you? And it's not that one is necessarily always, like I said before, superior to the other one. It's more important that at least it gives us a language
Yep.
to talk about some of the differences. And in talking about it, that doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong. That's a big issue generally is, a lot of times we're very, I talked about using wisdom and judgment as you develop. And the tendency, though, in terms of relationships, especially, is sometimes is to be judgmental. You know, oh, she doesn't like it when I dot 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 dot. You know, uh, and it doesn't mean that they're good or bad. It just means there's a difference. And again, it's the way we communicate that's often important.
And understanding what each needs, including understanding yourself, what you need. Like, for example,
Yes.
attachment style could be, let's say you have a fear of abandonment or there's some issues there. It could go back to your
Yes.
childhood. The other person needs to realize that when they're not around, they need to understand that, what you're thinking. But same thing on the love languages. No, not everybody needs acts of service. Some people, it
Right.
could be something
Right.
else, but the
Right.
understanding of each other. But we're out of time.
Okay,
Wonderful,
Steve.
wonderful
Okay.
talking about this. And we didn't think we would be able to fill the entire podcast with we didn't even get to grief, which
Yeah.
is huge. And I think next time we do get together, that might be uh, a good pickup. What's the best
Yeah.
way to
Well,
find you?
yeah. We'll start with that. Thank you,
Sure.
Steve. It's barrypilsonphd.com. I have a website. So if you want to make a contact through that, that's fine as well. Okay.
Yeah, and you're available. You're based in down south, as they say.
Yeah. I'm based in New Orleans, actually.
Yep. But you can work with anybody anywhere
Yeah.
virtually.
Yeah. There was a good article, by the way, about New Orleans in the New York Times opinion section yesterday.
Oh,
If
um,
anybody wants to read it.
in a sentence, What's it about?
It captures the paradox of living in New Orleans in terms of dealing with death and life. Death because of the catastrophes from the hurricanes, and life because that doesn't stop you from living. Okay.
Right. And then there's Mardi Gras.
That's what I'm saying. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, always a
Yeah.
pleasure. And thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Steve. I'll see you
Thank
next week.
We'll be right
Bye-bye.
back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.